Hey guys, happy April Fool's Day. So today you've got three assignments up on Google Classroom. None of them are terribly long, but make sure you do all of them before midnight tonight. Two are synonyms and antonyms from Unit 10. That should be pretty familiar. You've done that for Unit 9 already. If you have any questions, let me know, or if you have any difficulties with it. Be careful on your spelling. Again, I'm going to gradually work into not going back and fixing it just because you have an autocorrect or a misspelled word. For now, yes, I will start getting in the habit of spelling things correctly on those. The other thing is an exercise from 9-2 in Shurley, where we talked about quotation marks yesterday. I've given you three sentences, so it's really short. They're multiple choice. You go through and you pick which sentence has the quotation marks used correctly. Before you do that, you might want to go back and watch the part of yesterday's video where I talked about quotation marks again, just for a refresher, or you might want to look at Chapter 9, Lesson 2 in your Shurley book if you want to do it that way. Either way, you can use that as a reference. I don't really mind. But they're not terribly difficult. Just remember what I told you about, quotation marks going after punctuation, things like that, and where dialogue tags can show up either at the beginning, the end, the middle, so on and so forth. Today I'm going to go over the next 5 words from our Unit 10 vocab, so 6 through 10, and I'm going to talk about some extra quotation rules in Shurley Chapter 9, Lesson 3. I just uploaded a photo of reference 153 from the Shurley book. If you have your Shurley book, you can obviously look at it there. If not, it's on Classroom now. It talks about some extra punctuation rules because I felt like it was a lot easier for me to show you that because it's got some pretty good examples than it would be for me to try to talk you through it in the video. I'm still going to explain what they mean, but I'm not going to try to flip my phone around and show you examples on my screen because I don't feel like that's going to work as well. So reference 153, the photo I've uploaded on Classroom, should give you some really good examples, and we'll do some exercises with that tomorrow along with completing the sentence from Unit 10. So let's get into the vocab. Word 6 is engulf. So to engulf something, engulf is a verb. It's to swallow something up completely. The book definition on this is pretty good. It's to surround something, to consume it. So you could say, you can use it kind of as an exaggerating way of saying like I engulfed my food because I was so hungry. You could say the tent engulfed us when it collapsed, anything like that. Like it's just to cover up, to swallow up. It's usually used in a literal sense, but it can also be used figuratively. I could say I was engulfed by a series of emotions that I didn't know how to process when my grandma died or something like that. There are a lot of different ways to use it, but it always means to be consumed by, to swallow something up, to cover it in some way. Pretty easy word to use, I would say. Word 7 is foil. Foil has a lot of different meanings. So the one you're probably most familiar with is using it as a noun, like aluminum foil, like you would wrap food in. That's totally fine. It's a correct definition of the word foil. It can also be a verb. To foil something is to spoil it, to defeat it. So if I foil your attempts at getting out of your homework, it means I've beaten those attempts and you now have to do your homework. That's what foil means as a verb. That's, again, a pretty easy usage. I'd be fine with using it that way. The sword they use when fencing, like the little thin rapier, that's called a foil, a fencing foil. Another use of it is a noun. And another really common usage of it that you'll see in a lot of books and literature and things is as an opposite of something. Like in a movie or a book, someone's a foil. If they're kind of an opposite of another person, they're there to contrast against them. So when we read The Bronze Bow, I felt like the author did a really good job of using Rosh as a foil for Jesus. So we know a lot about Jesus from the Gospels and things and being in a Christian school. Rosh, as a person, is very opposite in a lot of ways. He's very different in the way he handles things from Jesus. He serves as a foil, and in that he highlights what's so special about Jesus because there's such a contrast. That's a foil. So if you considered me kind of goofy and weird and you had another teacher who was really serious and stern, and please don't say any names. I know you're probably thinking of people, don't do that. Then they would be a foil for me, or I would be a foil for them because there's a contrast that makes the characteristics of both stand out. Okay, so foil's got a lot of different meanings. I'm fine with any of them. They're all correct. I see all of them pretty regularly. Word 8 is formulate. So to formulate something is to create it, to devise it, to express it in some way, to invent something. So when I say to express it, I could formulate an opinion that red is better than blue. And by doing that, I would be explaining to you why red's better than blue. That's what formulating that opinion would be. I would be saying it and explaining it to you, expressing it out loud. If I formulate a plot to conquer the world while we're all trapped inside from the coronavirus, I would be developing, inventing, creating a plot, a plan to take over the world. I'm not, don't worry. But that would be to formulate that. It looks like the word formula. A formula is like a plan for something, a pattern you follow. to formulate is to create a plan, a pattern for something. So not a terribly difficult word to use as long as you remember that formulate idea. Word 9 is initiative. So initiative is a noun. It means to make the first move in something. So if you take the initiative to study without being told, you're probably a pretty good student. On the other hand, most of you, your parents probably have to take the initiative to make you study. That's fine. I was the same way. So it's a noun. It's the beginning of something. It's starting something generally without being forced to do so. So if someone tells you have a lot of initiative, it means you have a lot of get up and go. You're a hard worker. You don't have to be pushed. You don't have to necessarily be motivated by outside factors. You just kind of do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do. It'd be very mature of you. Most of you probably aren't like that at your age. If you are, congratulations. Word 10 is memento. Memento is a word that I've noticed a lot of kids try to use in the wrong parts of speech. So I'm going to make it really simple. It's always a noun. It's something that you have as a reminder of someone, like a keepsake, a souvenir, something like that, a reminder of someone or something, somewhere you went. So if you go on a vacation somewhere and you get a souvenir, a little keepsake, like a keychain or something, that's a memento of your trip. If a grandparent passes away and they leave you something that was theirs that was really special to them, that's a memento of that person. You could say, my grandpa left me a memento when he passed away to remember him by. Like if you got a locket or something from a grandparent, then you were supposed to remember them by that, or a photo, anything like that. That can be a memento. It doesn't matter what it is. Memento kind of sounds like memory. And that's what it is. It's a physical object that's supposed to be a reminder and to help you remember someone or something somewhere. It doesn't matter what, but it's something that you keep that serves as a reminder of that person, place, thing, whatever. So those are words 6 through 10. If you have any questions on any of those, any difficulties with synonyms and antonyms, anything like that, let me know. With that said, I'm going to talk a little bit about Shurley Chapter 9, Lesson 3 with the extra quotation rules. So I told you yesterday, obviously quotation marks are used to set off dialogue. Like Johnny said, I want to eat a pizza. And then I want to eat a pizza is in quotation marks. It can also be used in a few other ways. Some of them still concerned with dialogue. So when we have longer quotes, and again, this is all in reference 153. I'm glancing at that as I go over this. If you have a long quote, like someone's telling a story, like if I said, John told us the story of when blah, blah, blah happened. He said, and then I have this long multiple paragraph story that's just John talking. You put quotation marks at the start. Then at the end of each paragraph, you don't. And you put them again at the beginning of the next paragraph. Let me see if I can hold it up to where you can see. So you might be able to see that there. If you notice at the end of each of those paragraphs, when we have the same person still talking, there's not quotation marks, but there are at the beginning of the next paragraph. And then at the end of the final paragraph, like at the end of Johnny's story or whatever, we would finally have quotation marks again. The reason for that is if a person is continually talking and there are multiple paragraphs, like it's a speech or a long story, if we put quotation marks at the end of each paragraph, it looks like they've stopped talking and another person has started. So the way we show the difference there is by leaving off the quotation marks at the end of each paragraph within their long speech or story or whatever. And that can be a little bit complicated. You'll probably not need to use that. It doesn't show up outside of, if you're reading a book and someone in that book is telling a story or giving a speech, then something like that will come into effect. But if you didn't know that punctuation rule, you would probably be fine. I'm probably not going to ask you any questions based on it. So don't worry too much about that one. It is good to know if you ever wanted to get into creative writing seriously, which I know some of you are interested in. Then we have quotes within quotes. Now, this is something you need to know. So what a quote within a quote means, or a nested quote, it's going to sound kind of complicated, but I promise it's not. It's if I say, John told me that my mom said you should get out of the house more often. Okay? John told me, comma, your mom said. Now that's something that John's saying, so that's in quotes, right? John said, your mom said you need to get out of the house more often. So John said, quote, your mom said you need to get out of the house more often, end quote. That's our double quotes. That's normal. But within that, John is telling me what someone else said. Okay, so he is quoting someone else. I'm already quoting John. I'm saying John said, but then your mom said is what John's saying. Okay, I know this sounds complicated and confusing. If you see it in reference 153, I hope it'll make a little bit more sense. What my mom is actually saying there, you need to get out of the house more often, then needs to have single quotes, one little quote above each. Let me see if I can hold that one up for you. So, again, this is all that reference 153. So you see right there where there are the single quotes on that. That may actually be mirrored where you can't see it very well. But basically, if someone is quoting someone else and you are quoting them, so if I say, Sarah said, Sally said, let's go get lunch. Sarah said is not in quotes. That's our dialogue tag. Then everything else is inside those double quotes. Sally said we need to go get lunch is in double quotes. We need to go get lunch. The part that Sally said is in single. Yeah, I know it sounds really confusing. My class last year was confused with it. People are always confused with it. Look at reference 153. I will probably ask you a couple questions on this, so be prepared for it. I can try to clarify and answer questions on it because I know that's one thing, the quote within a quote, that's going to give you fits. There's not a really super easy way to explain it other than it's when you're quoting someone who is quoting someone else, and it can go on forever. You know, you can have a quote inside a quote inside a quote inside a quote, and it can get really, really confusing. I won't do that to you. At most, I'll do one quote inside of another one. But yeah, sorry, it's a tricky thing. It's probably the hardest thing with quotation marks. Also, when you're punctuating titles. So you guys have learned so far in my class with MLA formatting and everything that long titles, like novels, like we read, we italicize those so the letters slant. Short things like short stories, poems, like a YouTube video's title or an article in a newspaper, you put quotes around it. My general rule, and this is not always 100% the case, sometimes this doesn't work, but my general rule is whenever you're talking about the title of anything, whether it's a movie, a book, a poem, whatever, if it's something that would generally take you an hour or more to experience from beginning to end, you put it in italics. If it's something that would take you less than an hour, generally you're going to put it in quotes. So a short story is probably going to take you 15, 20 minutes to read, put it in quotes. A poem that's going to take you, anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minutes. Some of them are long, but most poems are pretty short. Quotes. A short film, a film that's, 10, 12 minutes long, a short like movie, like a YouTube video or something. Quotes, because it's short. A full-length film, like you would go to watch in the movie theater if we weren't all stuck in our houses, that would be in italics, because a full-length movie is usually going to run anywhere from, an hour and 15 minutes to 3.5 hours. That's over an hour, italics. That's not a firm rule. There are firm rules for everything as far as does this go in italics, does this go in quotes. But most of the time, if you stick to that hour or more italics, hour or less quotes, it works, okay? That's what I tell my 7th graders, and most of the time that works for them too. So it's a good rule if you don't want to have to deal with memorizing what goes in quotes and what goes in italics. The other thing is when you are indirectly quoting someone. So a direct quote is if I say, my mom said, I really like pizza. That needs to go in quotes because I'm saying, my mom said, I really like pizza. If I say, my mom told me she really likes pizza, there's no need for quotes there. That's an indirect quotation. I'm saying what she said, but I might be paraphrasing it. And you guys know I've talked about paraphrasing in our essays, and that's why you don't have to quote those. You have to cite them. You have to tell me where you got it, but you don't have to put it in quotation marks if you're paraphrasing. If you said, Daniel said, I hate the Romans, that needs to go in quotes because it's something he directly says. If you said, Daniel talks about how much he dislikes the Romans and blah, 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 that doesn't need to be in quotes. You're paraphrasing. You're putting it in your own words. You're saying what they said, but in a different way. So no quotes are needed there. That's what's called an indirect quotation or an indirect statement versus a direct quotation, which is where you literally say word for word what they said and you put it in quotes. So the only thing I think is going to be kind of concerning from today is the quote within a quote. I'm going to encourage you again, look at reference 153. Look at those where it's got double quotes and then single quotes inside of it. If you have questions on that, if you're not sure why that works the way it does, ask me, let me know. We will have an exercise on these tomorrow. It'll probably be a little bit longer than the one from today because there are more rules to work with here. I'll do something with quotes within a quote, probably a question or two. You can expect tomorrow's to be more like 7 or 8 questions probably instead of the 3 we had today. I'll do something with titles, what should this be in italics? Should it be in quotes? I'll probably give you several things and ask you what it should be in. And then as far as indirect quotations and direct quotations, I'll probably give you a couple questions on that. Make sure you understand the difference. But if you have any questions on any of that, any questions on any of the exercises today, the vocab, your essay, Bronze Bow, Friday at midnight is when it's due. I've posted a rubric, which is something that tells you how I'm going to grade it, what your points are going to come from. A couple of you have sent me your essays to look over. If you want to do that, feel free. I'll try to get time within the next couple of days to do that before it's due on Friday. But Friday by midnight, I need it submitted. You can go ahead and submit now. That's fine. If you want to make sure that there are no technical difficulties, I would probably go ahead and do that. Otherwise, see you guys.